The best soldiers I've ever known were never in combat. They never went to war. And I know that might surprise some of you guys. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I have never shot my rifle at an enemy. Not in Syria, not Iraq. And although I dropped a couple bombs in Ukraine, I shot a Mavic down, I never fired my rifle at an enemy. So in a lot of people's minds, I never went to combat. I was never wounded in a firefight, and all of this I've been very public about. I just got done sharing a video about the last 10 years of my life where I went to all these different war zones. I went to all these different places for many different reasons, where I spoke about the life that I lived and the battles I did and I didn't fight. And I spoke about the cost of ego. So let me get this clear. The point of that video was to tell you that you are enough. Your worth as a soldier, as a person, isn't measured by a combat story. So don't compare your path to mine or anybody else's. This isn't a race. So let's just say it how it is. Soldiers have it rough. It's a very toxic community where we tend to measure each other based on our scars and the danger we were in. Some people, even myself in the past, used to flaunt their combat record to shame others who didn't get their chance. It is stupid, and it misses what really makes a warrior. So here's what I'm going to talk about today, which is the best soldiers I ever knew in a war zone, outside of a war zone, have never seen combat. And some of them are still the standard I hold myself to and I judge myself by. Skill does not equal circumstance. Combat is not a trophy, it is orders. You don't earn combat, you get sent. And for the millions of veterans around the world, less than 2% actually go to war. Some of the sharpest, most technically skilled soldiers I knew never deployed, just because their unit didn't go. It wasn't in your orders. Consistency beats experience. When you go to combat, you are going to go down to your basic level of military knowledge. You're not going to be doing the CQB tactic you learned yesterday. You're going to be doing what you learned in boot camp a lot of times. You're going to be doing the very basic stuff because that's what's inherent in you. So for the soldiers that keep working year in, year out, working up to a deployment and then finally going, if they are to go and see combat, they're going to be much more prepared, whether they're experienced, seasoned, or not. Combat is random. Excellence is not. War doesn't pick the best. Just look at me. All right, look at me. I went to war. War picks who is next in line. I remember Ethan, before he was killed in action in Ukraine, he had no combat experience before that when he was an instructor in the same group that I was in, TDI. I remember him training with the students' rifles on his off time, reloads, disassembly, marksmanship drills, until he was running circles around us guys who had spent years with the AK in Iraq and Syria and then in Ukraine. He knew he was lacking something, and he didn't let his ego get in the way of getting the work done. He didn't say, oh, I wasn't in combat, I'm not good enough. He went after it. True motivation is internal. Some people I've met only train hard once they get shot at, once they get bombed for the first time. But the best soldiers I knew were disciplined before they even left the wire. Before they went out on their first operation, they were training hard, they were preparing themselves for years, even in instructor roles, because they knew their stuff so much. And then lo and behold, some of the best guys I knew in my last unit in Ukraine never saw combat before going into that unit. They were instructors with me, and it turns out they were great. Much better soldiers than myself. They went out continually into more dangerous missions because they knew what they were doing, and they felt confident in themselves because they took the years prior in the Marine Corps, in the Army, in different branches, instructing, other foreign volunteering roles, until they felt the need to go to the front line where they are performing to this day. Being a warrior is a mindset. It's how you train, it's how you lead, how you hold yourself, with or without a combat patch. Some of my closest bros never heard a shot fired in anger, but I'd follow them anywhere. When I was too scared to keep going on missions, they stepped in and they performed the tests. They were confident, they were prepared, and they were hungry to do the job right. But they were worthy of all that praise before they went to combat. This was just the proof. Deploying doesn't automatically make you a hero. I think back at some of my experiences with Sharesh, who had been through bombings in Iraq, but had never been through true war in Ukraine until he went there a couple years ago. He was killed in action with Ethan, but I met him back in Iraq. When I had arrived, he had already been there for over 2.5 years. 2.5 years, living in tunnels, surviving bombings. He knew how to keep us alive. He knew how to train us. He knew what patience was. The patience to build out bunkers for a year. Bunkers not even for yourself. You won't even occupy them. It's gonna be for somebody else a year later. But we work on them anyway. We prepare them because that's what a soldier does. He was one of the best guys I knew out there, but he wasn't in real combat. He was a great soldier though. We're being called to do our duties, whatever that task is. Whether it's training, being ready, or going to combat. And you don't have that choice. And I want to end with this. Some guys never even got the chance. You know, if I'd stuck with the Marine Corps, I would have never been deployed to a combat zone. I would have never went to combat. Does that make me less of a Marine? Does that make me less of a person? No. Experience is something. Yeah, war is the great equalizer. It'll show you and prove to everybody else who you are in those scenarios, but that doesn't make a soldier. A soldier is somebody who signs on the dotted lines and does the tasks to the best of his ability, whatever his commander asks him. And I've done plenty of mistakes in combat. So even though I went to war and I'm a combat veteran, woo, look at me, it doesn't mean I'm somebody to look up to. I know plenty of other people who don't have a YouTube channel that you should look up to, you know? So if you're watching this and you feel like you missed your shot, combat doesn't define you as a soldier. It doesn't define you as a person. We're used to ego, especially in the day and age of social media. Your mindset, your training, your integrity, that's what matters. Some of the best soldiers I ever knew never saw a battlefield, but they're still the measure of a man that I hold myself to. Does that make sense? I hope it does. Judge me and everybody else, not on my scars, not on my experience, but on my merit, on my character, on my integrity. And with that, thank you for watching. I'll see you guys later. Peace.